When I made my previous Vita Carnis video, I didn't expect to be back here talking about it again for at least another 6 or so months, to give them plenty of time to create and expand on the current lore. But here we are with another terrifying entry into the series that focuses on a part of the mimic life cycle I completely glossed over due to the fact that we didn't have any clue on what it does. If you've watched that video, you would know that I'm talking about elder mimics. Previously, I highlighted how all we know about them is that they're pretty much unkillable machines that are so quick and so quiet, they managed to completely snuff out an entire SWAT team in the season 1 finale without being seen on any cameras or reported in by anyone. These things on their own were terrifying, but due to the fact that we just didn't know how they hunted or anything outside of that, I decided to mostly ignore them and bring them up in Spark Notes when necessary. That was until this week, when Darian Quilloy, you madman, released the Vita Carnis Terminal Rally, a semi-sequel video to Revealed Progress, which I covered last time, and I would recommend if you haven't to watch that video, as this one pretty much acts as a direct sequel. So buckle up ladies, gents, and non-binary pals, as we delve once again into the twisted story of Vita Carnis. Now quickly, before we get started, I just want to say that viewer discretion is advised for things like flashing lights, gore, violence, and death. And while these are all standard for analog horror, trust me, it's really visceral here, so still be advised, and I'll put a warning up just before we get to it. The video opens with a notice from January 2nd, 1995, saying that a researcher who's been missing for 4 months at this point has missed a few progress reports, and they would like it to be followed up upon. This request was made by someone going by the name of B, who I can only assume is a new character to the series. The video then cuts to Dr. Farron Brones, our favorite mimic expert, with a progress report from September 20th, 1992, the same date as the first log in Revealed Progress, meaning this is where it picks up right after the report abruptly cuts. Here, Dr. Brones talks about the difficulty of researching mimics in their final stage of life, considering all their human-like subjects hide in plain sight and rely more on vocalization rather than stalking. And this is really interesting to me, as we now have confirmation that mimics can speak in short sentences and in different languages, which begs the question of just what these things truly are. I originally assumed they were just human-like, acting as Neanderthals or Homo sapiens, creatures similar to us with something just a bit off. But now they can talk, albeit after a while of stalking and understanding humans, but still, that brings mimics not only higher on the food chain, but also in intellect than I originally thought. Dr. Brones continues talking about how elders are absurdly rare, with only a few photos, one clear one, and the body of an elder they somehow managed to kill years ago. However, the method is not stated, and Dr. Brones is left stumped. We then cut to October 7th, 1994, where Dr. Brones is ecstatic as he's finally been given permission to go out in the field and research how mimics act in the wild, bringing some cameras, motion sensors, and some personal equipment he's made after researching mimics for so long. Going in solo, as no one else is as insane as Dr. Brones to want to be in the field was a mimic, decides to set up in an abandoned home that's within at least one mimic's territory, as the following footage we're about to view was actually recovered from his personal recorder in February of 1995, over 5 months since he originally set out on the project. Dr. Brones proceeds to give us a house tour of the equipment he set up, and something I noticed is that this is actually the same house from the Mimic defense tapes, where the Mimic chased that couple back home, broke through the doorway, and completely annihilated them. That means that we're following the same Mimic. And if that's true, it begs the question if we've been following this same mimic the whole time. Think about it, the mimic starts off killing that guy in the closet, then it goes hunting for its next meal in 1983, and gets that meal by killing those 2 people. Then in 1994, Dr. Brones shows up in its territory as it's already evolved into an elder. And if that's true, I absolutely adore that idea in a twisted sense. And this environment already gives me a sense of unease, knowing what happened literally around the corner from where Dr. Brones is standing. Moving on, we learn that Dr. Brones has stationed himself in the basement bathroom where he has enough food and water for 20 days, a bed, a reinforced door that should be able to withstand a mimic attack, and a system of lights that illuminate when a motion sensor is triggered, giving him a clear idea on where a mimic is within the house. Oh yeah, and a Glock for good measure. He then begins to record a log, where he identifies that this activity has drawn the desired attention. He goes over the equipment in the house, which includes cameras in each room, including the closets, with motion sensors attached and a baby monitor in one of the bedrooms so he can listen in to what the mimic is doing and if it says anything. Dr. Brones was careful to make sure it appears as if he hasn't left the home, to make the mimic confident enough to enter the home and look for him. Dr. Brones is ecstatic as always, having fun with his job, and I love this character, man. It's too bad what happens to him is inevitable, as he ends day 1 of recording. He picks up in the morning of day 2 with nothing of note having happened, but that night at 2 AM, the front entrance light turned on, meaning the mimic has entered the home once again. The mimic quickly sweeps the living room, main bedroom, and its accompanying closet. Brones attempts to listen to what's going on using the baby monitor, but at that moment, all mimic activity within the home ceases, and he worries that he may have scared the mimic away. We then pick up 2 hours later, with nothing else having happened, which means the mimic has not left the house, but is most likely hidden inside the furniture. But Dr. Brones is suspicious, given the fact that it hasn't moved at all, before recording again another 2 hours later. 4 hours after the mimic stopped moving, he makes up his mind to take a look outside his door and see if he can find it.
We're going to do something stupid, okay? I'm going to go and check what happened. I'm going to try and play it safe, going slowly. Okay, here we go. Gun, just in case.
Holy fucking shit, dude. I have no clue if this is a puppet like Darian's previous works or if he is upgraded to 3D, but that is a horrific visual. Seeing the mimic just barely down the stairs, its arm, probably the length of a person, stretched out, and only its head and shoulder visible as it slinks back into the room it came from is haunting. Considering the fact that instead of attacking, it retreated, means that not only is this mimic cautious of Brones, it's studying him. Given the fact that it didn't trigger any sensors, it was so smart that it figured out that it was being watched and that they could tell when it moved. So it started to crawl very slowly over the course of 4 hours to find out who set this up and where they were hiding, and it got its answer. Considering what we know about Elder Mimics and what Dr. Brones knows about Elder Mimics, this situation has gone from bad but manageable with a gun to completely impossible to survive. His only source of safety and solace is that barricaded bathroom with the Elder lying in wait between him and the only exit in the house. Dr. Brones has put himself in an almost inescapable position, armed with a camera and a gun with no communication with the outside world. Still, he thinks his best course of action is to abort mission and escape, planning to stay quiet and trick the mimic into thinking he's left. We then cut to day 6, where after no activity for a whole day, he debates on leaving but decides to wait it out since HQ will send people to get him after day 20. This begins Dr. Brones' descent into madness, as he begins talking about legends surrounding Elder Mimics and how they are God's perfect creations and killing machines. He questions again how he got into this mess while the mimic groans quietly in the background. Finally, we get to day 9, and with no movement for a couple of days, Dr. Brones thinks the mimic has left, and he's freed to make an escape.
I can't keep staying here. I'm beginning to lose it. I need to leave. Gather my stuff and leave. I need to be careful. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Okay. I've got everything I need. Oh, gun in hand. It's time to go. Fuck.
Again, such a haunting and terrifying scene from Darian. This man, out of any analog horror creator I know, can create some of the most tense and horrific scenarios out of a couple of seconds and silence. It's horrific and wonderful to watch all at the same time. And I for one am loving this video so far, and how much it tells us about the elders by showing us instead of telling us. This mimic has been sat at that door for God knows how long, listening and learning what Dr. Brones is doing and what he knows. It knows that he's going nuts in there, and all it has to do is wait until he gets desperate enough to make a run for it. And where better to wait than right outside the door, as we see that even after 2 days, the mimic continues to wait just outside his door, with Dr. Brones questioning why the mimic doesn't just kill him in his trapped position. He's unable to realize the longer he's alive, the more the mimic learns about humans. Dr. Brones is so terrified and haunted by this thing that his notebook has gone from diagrams of the house and research to just drawings of the elder's face taking up an entire page. We then get to my personal favorite scene from this episode, but also one of the most haunting, as the elder sits in the bedroom using the baby monitor to communicate with Dr. Brones, babbling incoherently which can only be described as laughter, as Dr. Brones begs for the mimic to stop tormenting him.
Please stop. I can't. Please.
We then cut to day 16, as Dr. Brones begins to form a plan to escape, and the mimic, listening in, begins to attack the door. Pulling it open despite Brones' best efforts, it shoves its hand in front of its face into the entrance, showing not only Dr. Brones, but the viewer that he is not safe in this room, and the mimic could have killed him whenever it wished. He fails to keep the door closed, reaching for his gun and opening fire, landing a shot and staggering the mimic as its haunting cries fill the room. This scene does so much not only to prove the intelligence of the mimics, but to show us how they react to our forms of defense, and how patient they can be. It's terrifying, and I for one would have given up at this point, because what do you even do against that doesn't end in death? Even if you ran, we know normal mimics are faster than most humans, so what's to say an elder will not run you down in seconds? Hell, you probably wouldn't even make it outside the door of the house without the mimic completely annihilating you. Something I just thought of, more evidence this thing studying Brones, is that it could have bust down that door the second Brones went to sleep, yet it kept him alive to learn more. Moving on, however, Dr. Brones regrets not making an attempt to escape, even though the mimic is waiting for him right at the stairs. Still, he concludes he needs to wait till day 20, as the mimic can be heard scraping around nearby. And that has to be one of my favorite parts of the tape. There was no easy spot to put this, but every time Dr. Brones talks or is near the end of a sentence, the mimic talks him by pretty much running around the house, creating noise and letting him know that he is never alone and never safe in that room. I cannot sing Darian's praises enough for this episode. It's a work of art. I love it. Finally, we reach day 20. Dr. Brones sounds exhausted and desperate. His food is running low, but he's still holding out hope that HQ is coming for him, and that they haven't abandoned him. Today, he will be rescued and free from this nightmare, except that doesn't come to pass. As we pick up again at day 22, once again this constant theme of the mimic knowing appears, as the tides have now fully turned and the mimic is the one waiting, as Dr. Brones seeps deeper and deeper into dread and despair. We then reach day 28, which starts as Dr. Brones puts the camera under the sink facing away from the room, as he laments that food has run out, and we get the most haunting line this series has given us yet.
I know, Al. I know. I was too dumb to realize. But I have it figured out. They sent me here to die.
That single line, despite its unimportance in the overall narrative, says so much about the world and the living meat corporations. It's not a coincidence Dr. Brones ended back in that same house from 1983. It's not a coincidence that that mimic is still alive and now is an elder. Nothing was a coincidence. Everything was planned from the start to ensure Dr. Brones dies here and now. For what reason we still don't know. The current plotline is that the singularities have taken over government bodies and important individuals, and I suspect they were the ones who approved Dr. Brones' request and sent him to die, so that no one else with that much knowledge on mimics would ever stand in their way. As stated before, these creatures are the ultimate killing machines, and they can't have their prey learning how to defend against them. Continuing with the tape, Dr. Brones hopes that someone other than those in charge will find this tape and it will help an outsider, before recording one final log for the corporations.
Audio log? It's been 28 days. Hope is lost. He waits for me now. He will claim his kill soon, probably. Probably hears me right now. But I know now. I'm ready. I know he knows. This is it. There you are.
Dr. Brones died in the way so many others have before him, with that bone-chilling crunch sound the victims make as the mimic rips them apart piece by piece. However, unlike the other tapes, it doesn't end there. No, instead of having our minds run rampant what the mimic might leave behind, if anything, from its victims, the next thing we are shown is Farron's dead body, ripped apart with dried blood littering his mattress and walls. There is nothing but his clothes left in his body and his skeleton, ripped apart piece by piece, organ by organ, chunk of flesh by chunk of flesh. We learn that every piece of equipment Dr. Brones brought with him is missing. Presumably, the mimic has removed any evidence it could find, with the camera being the only thing it missed. The tape ends with a message from someone called V on the 17th of February 1995, saying that things are much more dire than expected, and that whoever's receiving the message is to be careful. As this incredible video ends with the text and more to come appearing on screen after the credits. Except there's already more to cover, as we head to the description and find an unlisted video linked below. First, let's cover the title of this video. The title is a reversed message, you can tell by the capital K at the end of the sentence. Judging by its appearance, it's a Caesar cipher. So that's the first thing I tried. And on a shift of 7 letters, we get the text backwards, divide and conquer. The video itself is about 1.5 minutes long, showing a bunch of spiders, skulls, the singularity symbol, and death, with audio that sounds reversed. So I chucked it into Premiere and took a listen, and I immediately knew I was on the right track after hearing a soft music box being played in the background. However, I couldn't make out anything of what I could presume to be talking, so I tried 2 things. The first was double speed to see if it was slowed down at all, and it ended up getting a very clear carcass, and what sounded like the word yes or prince being repeated over and over. I unfortunately couldn't make out anything else, but if the words are prince and carcass, then maybe the prince from the story we've been following in the background is dead. Or more so, maybe the prince and Brones are related, and the company that employed Dr. Brones sent him to die as an attempt at ending the prince's bloodline. I next tried to see if there's a message hidden in the audio itself, but again that came up empty-handed. So I don't know what this edible Zaha trip has hidden inside, but I know someone smarter than me will figure it out. But it's really cool to see this kind of puzzle in an analog horror. This video clearly has to do with the singularities considering their symbol is all over the shop, but that's all I could find, so let's move on to closing thoughts. As I am both horrified and extremely excited. This video in the short 17 minutes has made me terrified of the mimics for a reason I briefly touched upon last time, but I didn't feel like emphasized enough. These things, outside of being terrifying hunters, are insanely smart. They know what they can do, and they know what you can do, and it's haunting. Darian does a fantastic job each episode with the designs, the puppets and 3D models, and creating that fear and tension without the assistance of music or cheap scares. It feels like now that we've seen an Elder, we're in the end game for Vita Carnis, and I for one cannot be more excited for that. this series has a whole host of haunting entities I may cover one day once the series is over, because a lot of what I've just said before won't make a lot of sense to you, but for those who have watched the series and have participated in the puzzles, hold something big we just haven't figured out yet. So I urge you to go and experience this masterpiece for yourself from the beginning, because as Darian said, there's more to come. And until then, I've been Core. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. We're so close to 2K and I want to hit it before February, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. Bye bye for now.